Hello everybody. In this screencast we're going to look at how can you add fragments dynamically into an activity. In the previous example, what we did is we added it in the layout, right? Like this. We just dragged the fragment into the layout. But how can we do this dynamically in code, using code? How can I insert the fragment inside the activity in code? The first thing we have to do is we have to identify a location where we want to drop that fragment. So first of all, we go in and delete this fragment from our code. So I need to identify where I'm going to drop this fragment, right? So basically, let's say I will get you need to have a component or a holder where you're going to drop this fragment in. Okay, it's called the root view, a view where you're going to drop this fragment in. So let's say I will get a relative layout, for example. I'll drag it from here and drop it here. And basically this is where I want my fragment to be. Oops, sorry. Let's do it again. Relative layout. Okay, here it is. And I want it to be to the top, to the left, and this one and this one. So basically the relative layout is sitting inside the constraint layout. Now also what I want to do is, let's go to the code just to see get an idea of what's going on. And the layout width and height, I don't want that. I want it to occupy the whole screen. So basically we go here. I don't want it to be like this. Instead we click another one and another one. So basically here we are. This is my relative layout. I want to put the fragment inside that relative layout. A relative layout, a frame layout, whatever layout you want to use, right? So you need a container that's going to hold it. And I'm going to call it, for example, the container ID. Container ID, for example, or container view, or whatever you want to call it. Container view, right? So that becomes my relative layout. This is the container view here, right? Now, what I'm going to do is I'm going to use this container view to drop the fragment inside it, okay? So now, okay, so that's the approach that I'm going to use, okay? Okay. So in the main activity, if I run the main activity, nothing is going to show up. Actually, the fragment is not even going to be there. So when you run it, it will be empty. There is nothing, right? But there will be a relative layout here that has nothing inside it, right? So now, how do I bring in the fragment? So first of all, what I will do is I will need something to help me, and that's called the fragment manager. The fragment manager, I need to use the fragment manager to add the fragment into the fragment manager at the container view, inside the container view. So how do I do that? So I need to say get fragment manager, and you could see that I need to use the support fragment manager. Why the support fragment manager? Because I'm extending app-compat activity, and app-compat activity is an extension of activity. So for me to, and that's the support library. So that's why I need to use get support fragment manager. Here it is. Okay, I'll say begin transaction. Okay, and now what I want to do is add. Basically here it is. And you could see that there are different kinds of adds. One, you add the fragment and you give it a tag. The tag is very important because in some cases you want to retrieve the fragment from the layout and to pass data to the fragment or to communicate with the fragment. And the tag allows you to find fragment by tag, right? So basically what I'm going to do is I'm going to use the second one. The second one allows me to provide a container view ID, the ID of where I want to drop that fragment, the ID of the container that I want to drop the fragment in, and an instance of the fragment. So we'll do this. It's r.id.container view, comma, new first fragment, right? That's my first fragment. Now after I add, I'll say .commit, and basically I added the fragment dynamically to my view. And of course I cannot do this I cannot do this here, which is going to crash. Why? Because if I do it here, there is no content view. So I need to do it after my layout is done, right? So I can get the support fragment manager. You begin the transaction, you add the fragment to that view, and then you commit. So now when we run it, you will see that the fragment is going to show up. Boom, and here is our fragment. So basically that's how you add the fragment dynamically, and that's very simple. And also I'm using the vanilla approach of instantiating a fragment, because this fragment, I'm not passing it any data, right? And also, of course, all the fragments are already set up. You can click, things will happen, and so on. So that's a very simple way of doing it. But again, the first thing you need to worry about is, one, you need to identify where you want to drop this fragment. and that's where the fragment is going to be dropped or added, right? And that is, it needs to have an ID, so we call it container view. And then basically when you go to the code, you will see that we used that ID here, right? We are adding the fragment here, and so on. So that's basically the quick overview of how you add a fragment to the layout dynamically or in code or while the app is running. Please let me know if you have any questions. Thank you.